Thank you very much. Today, the G20 finance minister and central bank governors met for the first time under the Italian presidency. And together with Governor Visco, I had the honor of chairing this meeting and hosting what I think is a very productive exchange of views. Now I'll try to give you a brief overview of the discussion that we had in the first session, which I chaired. Then Governor Visco will tell you about the second session, which he chaired. In the first session, we focused on the global economy and on the policy actions which are required for achieving a robust and equitable recovery. Since the outbreak of the pandemic crisis, G20 finance ministries and central banks have undertaken unprecedented efforts to come to grips with the health, the economic, and the social impact of the pandemic. And now, despite the availability of safe vaccines and also the expected strengthening of economic activity over the next quarters, health and economic conditions remain challenging. Therefore, we need to monitor the situation and, in case, to step up our joint efforts to address this difficult situation. Against this mixed background, ministers and governors today reaffirmed their commitment to scaling up international coordination to tackle current global challenges. And today we focused on a number of core priorities. First point is that the economic recovery is still fragile and is still uneven across countries. And in this context, ministers and governors concurred on the importance to further strengthening policy cooperation in order to put the global economy on a path of stable and sustainable growth. I think one word which was frequently quoted today is multilateralism. Multilateralism is more important than ever and needs to be enhanced by closer coordination among G20 members. In the current health and economic context, it is essential to remain vigilant and to learn from previous crises. Any premature withdrawal of fiscal and monetary policies should be, in this context, avoided. A core priority, again in this context, is that of granting equitable access to safe vaccines, but also to diagnostic and therapeutics. We will not get out of this crisis. We will not get back to a normal situation until the virus is eradicated in all countries. For this reason, ministers and governors agreed on the need to push for a bold and global response aimed at curbing the virus diffusion everywhere, also by addressing the financing gap of the access to COVID-19 tool, the so-called ACTA. We also welcome the establishment of a G20 high-level independent panel. This panel is working on how to get prepared from a financial point of view to tackle future pandemics. So the objective of the panel is to identify and devise solutions which will fill the gaps in the financing of pandemic prevention, surveillance, preparedness, and response. The panel ensures broader regional and gender composition and comprises a number of eminent individuals from the health, financial, and philanthropic sectors. And its work will complement the work of other groups focusing more on the health side, and they will prepare a report for the July meeting of ministers and governors. Today's challenges should not divert our attention from the importance of developing a shared vision of what will be the post-COVID world. The next review of the G20 action plan will be a good occasion to reflect on this. The action plan, which was started under the Saudi presidency last year, is meant to be a living document, and we are committed to updating it in order to capture evolving health and economic circumstances. Our next meeting in April will be the right moment to address the new challenges together with the pre-existing challenges, such as those of low productivity growth, rising inequality, and the infrastructure financing gap. During the meeting, someone mentioned the fact that we should move ahead on a two-track approach, focusing on current pressing challenges, but also looking beyond and focusing to the challenges which will be important in the coming years. Ministers and governors discussed how the recovery strategy can represent an opportunity to shape a more sustainable development model. This includes promoting the transition towards greener, more inclusive, and more equitable societies. So ministers and governors, we think they can play a crucial role on this, and they should lead the way. In today's discussion, we explored how to address climate-related challenges. The G20 dialogue on climate change will continue in our April and July meeting, and in the July meeting that we would like to organize in person in Venice. We will hold two important events related to environmental sustainability. We will have a high-level tax symposium on one side, and then we will host a climate conference. These initiatives will bring together policymakers, international financial institutions, and eminent representatives, both from the academia and the private financial sector. Ministers and governors also reaffirmed their support to the most vulnerable countries, especially those facing unsustainable debt burdens. We know that the pandemic is hitting weaker economies more severely, and this risk jeopardizing development prospects, especially in African countries. Today, 3 African countries contributed to the discussion in the first session. And for this reason, we agreed that additional tools should be explored to meet their long-term financing needs. And this should be done at a global scale in close cooperation with the international financial institutions. In the near future, the effective implementation of the G20 Common Framework on Debt Treatment and the Debt Service Suspension Initiative are 2 key milestones to support countries under particular distress, and they will be discussed further in the next ministerial meetings. Ministers and governors also exchanged views on how to improve debt transparency. I think one of the key messages emerging from today's discussion is that the pandemic has widened inequality both across and within countries. and that this increase in inequality must be reversed quickly as possible, by addressing the needs of those who have suffered the most, in particular women, the youth, young people, and low-income workers. Finally, on international taxation, ministers and governors focused on the need to reform the current system. This has become an urgent task as we are faced with the challenges posed by globalization and also by the digitalization of the economy. In this regard, the G20 will build on the ongoing work with a view to achieving a global consensus-based solution by mid-2021. So, thank you for your attention.